Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today's special guest is EdieAnn Feigles. She is the partner of Woven. So welcome to the show, EdieAnn.
Thank you. Good to be here. And thank you for having me on my very first podcast.
Well, thank you for choosing us, or me, for your very first podcast, because I have to say what you're doing is quite extraordinary, working in the world of startups. And this is not your first time at the rodeo of startups. You have a pretty extensive background in this. Could you explain briefly, everything you've done?
Just briefly. Oh, wow. Everything. No, let's not go back that far. I really got into startups because, here's the irony. I got into startups because at one point in time, I worked for a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering firm. And we got into geotechnical engineering. Or not geotechnical, geothermal HVAC.
Geothermal, a little different.
Yeah, just a wee bit. Geothermal. But geothermal for me was that first foray into that more sustainable way of doing heating, cooling in buildings. And we were doing it. They were designing them for office buildings. They did them for government buildings. They were on some different bases. They did, the bachelor enlisted quarters and things like that type of thing for the government. But they also did a museum and they did schools. And it became this thing is like, okay, it's different, but realizing how sustainable it was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it was right at the time when the LEED certified buildings were coming in and the play and all that. And so that was the first foray. And I kind of stayed in that arena for a while. And then I thought somewhere along the line was it 2008 when we had that second bubble of bursts of, with real estate development and things like that, I really wanted to make a shift. And I started thinking about where I wanted to be. And I kept going back to that experience. And I thought, okay, startups. That was and I really wanted to think more of in the renewable energy. Well, the first opportunity was actually working with an IoT edge software company. So that was my first foray. I mean, very different, but they were actually energy oriented. They wanted to be able to pull the data to show the amount of energy is being used and then the ways you can utilize that data to then improve on your sustainability in buildings and in the built environment. So that was so it actually worked for me to transition, but I went from there into, from IoT edge software into data analytics, ended up working with one that was trying to develop a brand new data infrastructure, if you will. So when you think about data centers and the fact that most of them are older and they just keep trying to upgrade them and expand on them to be able to maintain and be able to handle all the traffic flow, if you will.
Yeah.
And these guys were just completely, and then you have all that heat. So these guys were looking at it from a perspective of how can we build a system that is designed today, is actually able to move at the speed of technology demands, because more and more is going towards, they need that supercomputing capability and the AI and all of that, but then also design the data center itself with more of a sustainable approach to the heat exchange and all of those types of things. So it was really interesting. So that was my foray. Those types of startups were my foray into the whole arena. One of the things I realized when I went to my last one was the fact that it was a renewable energy company. Renewable energy startup here in the UK, because I'm an American and I went from the US to the UK. But you realize the difference of what clean tech needs.
Yeah.
You realize this massive change in focus from build a system, get some engineers, develop something that you can have some series of engineers come in and you can build something and have a minimal viable product inside of 3 to 6 months, and you can have users on there, and in a year you're bringing revenue. That is one model that just, when it comes to the clean tech and that deep technology, it just doesn't work. I know you've seen it. I know.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that one of the things you taught me was some of these clean tech things, they take years and hundreds of millions of dollars to actually build out. Right. This is, you're working with very large projects. And you've seen a lot of failures. You've seen everything.
Right. Well, and I was thinking about this morning when I was writing a thought leadership post to go on LinkedIn. And it was interesting because I was thinking about it and thinking, okay, they say that like 90% of all startups fail. And that's talking about the SaaS model. That's talking about software and business to business and business to consumer. And that is one, I mean, that model is designed, and really what gets talked about by advisors and all kinds of people out there in the startup arena is that business model, that SaaS business model. If 90% of them fail, and then you have clean tech, which cannot use that model because it is hardware and it's deep tech and it's all these things that take years of research. Then you have to build up and verify and test and validate all of that research and development you've done into a prototype that could cost you anywhere from $500,000 to $15 million, depending on what it is. I mean, if you think about what a new turbine would cost, that huge prototype. And so you look at that and you go from, okay, inside of a year for software, but you could be talking about 3 years in R&D in clean tech, and then, build a prototype, and then the testing and validation, and then just getting to market from there. You could be talking about 15 years.
Yeah.
At a minimum, kind of thing. Night and day.
It's hard. Yeah. No, I mean, and again, decarbonization, we all know it needs to happen. I get people jumping all over me when I say that. I'm not talking about removing carbon from all life on Earth. We're talking about excess carbon in the atmosphere that's causing, excess heat. So just to clarify that so people understand the basics of it. But you've seen everything from startup to finish to failures to people, hands-on experience. Woven is your new company that you are a partner of that is really tackling this head on. So could you explain to people, why you started Woven and what you guys do?
Well, my time with the renewable energy startup was an eye-opener for me.
I'm sure it was.
Understanding the cost of building a prototype, and even getting, you have a baseline prototype, just getting it from that prototype to, say, the industrial level prototype you could actually put into an installation. It's hundreds of thousands just to get to, it may be 400, 500,000 just to build that baseline prototype. Then you go through all the testing and what it really needs to do. And it's testing from a different perspective. And you're not testing it to just make sure it works. You think of it this way. If you want to break into the grid market, so you want to build something that's going to be on the grid, it has to operate at a certain level. So there are all these different requirements and things like that. And, they're ISO. You have to have ISO standards in there when you do some of this stuff, because otherwise you're not considered at a certain level. The process and the timeline to get there is not overnight. And that was the big eye opener. And then my partner was in a different arena, and he had been in the industrial arena for a long time as a sales rep and business development, got into marketing, but he was fascinated by renewable energy and clean tech. And he started posting about things. And all of a sudden he had these startups coming to him going, hey, I have this idea. How do I do this? And he and I were talking, and it was just one of these things of, you know what? The program doesn't exist.
No.
The ecosystem is not quite there. All the stakeholders in the ecosystem they're there, but they're not working almost like a collaboration to create the mechanism for getting this innovation to market. And we started looking at it and saying, all these startups are talking about SaaS and doing this really quickly.
Software as a service, folks.
Right. Yes. Sorry. Yes. I don't like acronyms, but that's one I do use quite a bit.
You're perfectly fine.
It was understanding the challenges. And so we started looking at it and asking, how do we get to the point where we can actually lay out a program? And we actually developed a program we call the Continuum Program. And we overlap the technology readiness levels that you have to go through from concept to production. Okay. And then we have that, and we paralleled it, and in tandem, we show your business growth, your marketing, your market strategy. And I don't like using go-to-market strategy because it's become such a software-oriented thing. And because this is longer, to me, I just say it's a market strategy because it has to it's, you start one place and you have to go a long ways to get to where you want to be. So it's a much longer than, this is how we're going to get into the market. But we have the TRL, and then we have our business plan and the market strategy and IP and, you know, intellectual property, and finance, and even getting down to human resources.
Yeah.
And things like that. And of course, you want your legal and accounting and all of that all in there. And when you're talking about renewable energy, we look at it and say, oh, well, wait a minute, let's start talking about, is this going to be grid level? Is this going to be industrial? Is it going to be commercial? Is it residential? And if you're talking about certain things, okay, let's start putting energy modeling into that. Let's start building in all of your sensors. So you have software data collection. And because think about all of the, like IoT, Internet of Things, you have disparate sources of data. And then you have legacy systems
to think about too.
And you have legacy systems and new technology, and how do you get them to work together? So when you talk about grid, you have to have that interconnectivity and interoperability. So we tried to lay out a program that was 24 months that shows how you do all that and how they're all woven together.
So you took something very simple. You went with the low bar techno, just kidding. But
I know it's a bit corny, but it makes sense when you think about all those pieces weaving together to come up with a fabric. And so it's woven together. And that was our approach. And that's where we started thinking about things and how could we deliver this. Right now, we are focused being organic. We're growing organically. So we are working and pursuing clients who are on that process. They're usually in that technology readiness level of about 4 or 5. So they have a certain amount of funding in the door. They have proof of concept and things like that, but they need to start intermixing their market strategy and their business plan and maybe some of their IP strategy, because IP isn't just your patent, and the patent isn't just a one-time thing. You have to time it so you're pursuing it at the right time and not too early, because you might change it and you don't want to have to spend that extra money.
True.
So right now we're working with those types of clients and then working with them saying, okay, here's that market strategy and here are all those other things that we're working on. And it's a 12-month contract kind of thing that we can get there. Down the road, as we get those clients in and build up our cash reserves, we will get to the point where we want to be able to bring in those clients that are concept, that have an amazing concept, amazing technology that they have laid out, that we can then verify, validate, and work with them and invest in them.
Yes.
Put in that money to invest in them and provide them so it's investment and the services to get through that 24 months that puts them on that pathway to be at the ready for Series A, rounds, things like that. So they are on the pathway to get to market, and maybe even bringing in the right partners to be able to say, okay, here's somebody who needs what you're doing. And if you partner with them, it's a larger firm. They help pull you into the marketplace.
Oh, nice.
Instead of the little guy trying to push it up the hill.
Oh, no. And I mean, on this show, I interview a lot of inventors and entrepreneurs, and they are like the single proprietary company trying to push that rock up that hill, trying to get recognition, trying to protect their patents and their ideas, but simultaneously trying to pitch it, which is very difficult to do without giving it away. And, I have done my research on you guys. So you have listed your challenges up there. So you have your ecosystem challenge, investment challenge, partnership challenge, technology challenge, commercialization challenge. So 5 challenges that you are helping people map their way through. You give them the guide, you give them the guidebook basically.
And it can't be unlike you think about a lot of the accelerators that are out there.
Yeah.
And they are 3 or 4 months, and they give you kind of, there are really good accelerators out there. And there are others that maybe aren't as strong as others. Everybody's heard about Y Combinator, but most of them still are geared towards software as a service or the B2B or the B2C and things like that. And giving somebody a playbook, if you will, and having them try to digest that in 4 months is tough. And it's tough enough. And that's what I said earlier. Think about the number of startups that fail just in that arena. And even the ones, their percentage may be, for the ones that go through their accelerators, they get 1 or 2 that make it.
Yeah.
So you think about that percentage of there, and then you think about having a pathway to market that is 5, 7, 10 years. And the chances of surviving that.
Yeah. Just to get someone to last 5, 10 years before really launching, that's a long-term investment, and that takes a lot of faith.
It's why the ecosystem is challenging, and it's why an ecosystem really needs to get to a point where there's it's a good framework, because government is involved, and government has to set the policies and make sure that those policies are moving things forward. And there are ways of doing that, and they're setting a framework into even just the investment into the startups within that framework.
Government takes forever, by the way, to get back to people, or to give, when you try to invent something and you pass it through, it's like go through all the approvals and the policies. This is not like a 1-year turnaround.
No.
This is years. And then just to get the little tweaks done is more years on top of that, just to get those approval processing forward. So what you're doing is extremely difficult. And, what led you to take on such a giant challenge? You're not going for the easy stuff that most people like to do.
Boy, good question. And it's, you're thinking, there are a lot of people say that, my children and my children's children. I don't say that because I don't actually have kids. I'm one of those people that just wasn't in the cards. But I do look at it and say, we all have a responsibility to leave the earth in a better position than we did when we arrived.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I come from. I love being outdoors. I'm an avid photographer, so I love being outdoors. I like having the camera with me, and I do macro, so I get into the little nitty gritty things of plants and animal, insects and things like that. So I like that kind of stuff. But when you look at what's happening and you see the changes in what's happening out there, it's huge. And I looked at it and say, how can I impact it? How can I help this get further? And without innovation, we'll never get there. And without the innovation actually being able to get there and having the support it needs, it won't get there. So we won't get to where we want to be in a more sustainable world. And I'm going to say this up front right now, because I think there's an argument out there about fossil fuels, sustainability, and renewables, and it's either an either or. And I don't feel that way.
I agree.
I don't think it's an either or. It is a balance of them.
Yeah. We're never going to get rid of petroleum. We're too dependent. It's never going to go away. We
can reduce it.
Yeah. We need to be better.
Reduce it. And that to me is, but you need you need that innovation and then new technology, and you need the support system to get it to the market. Right now, one of the challenges out there, and people say, oh, well, renewables, how can you deal with them? You can't rely on them because they're not constant and this, that, and the other thing. You're right. That is an issue, which is why you have battery storage companies that are driving and pushing themselves to solve that problem. And you have different types of batteries. You have lithium ion and all those different things. And some can do 4 hours, some get to 12 hours, some are getting to 24 hours. I personally tell people we need energy diversification. We need to look at all forms. You worked in geothermal. That is a form of energy. We have hydrogen. We have multitudes of ways to get our energy depending on what works best for where you live and the geography of where you are. Right. That's simple. And we know that there's a challenge with solar and wind because it's not constant. So we have to find a solution. How do you balance that? Yeah. And I think there's always going to be this need for fossil fuels, but we can minimize it. We can reduce that into a more viable level and then balance it with
maybe just stop burning it and use it for other things. I mean, there's a multitude of things we can do that doesn't require burning it, which is the pollution. And when you said what triggers you to do what you do, one of the first conversations I had regarding sustainability and why is I asked the question, why don't people care? And a friend of mine said to me, they'll care when they can't breathe anymore. And that hit me. I thought, okay, that's my goal. I want people in future generations to be able to breathe. As simple as that sounds.
Nothing is important to an individual until it impacts them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, so here are some of these things when you think about, I mean, I don't want to get political, but the geopolitics of this world right now,
It's a little crazy.
Impact a lot of things. So you think about supply chain, and then you think about oil. And here in the UK, the price of heating went up dramatically because of what was happening in Ukraine. And so when you start shifting and you have, okay, you know that some of your supply comes there, but also some of it is coming from local, almost community level energy and things like that. Now you start to eliminate some of that. Now you start looking and say, okay, well, wait a minute, that's going up, but the price of other things are coming down. Let's do more of this. And it's not until it hits you personally, your pocketbook, something that you start to recognize and go, wait a minute, this can be different.
We do need to have more local resourcing. Absolutely. We need to be able to be more self-reliant. And that's just not with heating. That is with pretty much everything we do. We need to bring it back to wherever you live locally, so you're not overly dependent on someone else providing materials to you. And one of the things about woven that I also read up on your site, I do my research. You have 3 very good steps. You have focus, execution, which leads to traction.
Right.
You are helping people figure out, how do I focus? How do I get this done? And how do I get it moving down the road to success? Right. Which that is a full service that you guys offer to people. So how do people, what's the best way for people to find you? Because I personally know a lot of entrepreneurs that I'm going to be telling them about you guys.
We'll take it.
Obviously, I mean, you're doing organic growth. You are very busy. We have established that. But how do more people find you? Because I think this is a service that people could definitely benefit from.
I think, first of all, they can find me on LinkedIn personally.
You're easily found on LinkedIn.
Yep. Woven is on LinkedIn. It's Woven Startup. And we are on LinkedIn, and then we have our website. And anybody can go to our website, and we have a little button you can push and say you want to connect with somebody, have a conversation. Please reach out to us.
Oh, that's
reach out, and we'll have that conversation. And yes, we are in the UK, but let me be clear: we have people we've been talking to in the EU. We have companies we've talked to in places like Latvia and Ukraine, Canada, the United States, all over. So please don't think that, they're only in the UK. No. We believe in working with wherever. I am an American, so I understand the system there, but I'm also looking at it and thinking different countries are doing different programs really well.
Yeah.
When you come to some of the things, offshore wind and marine, UK's done really well. But when you look at the level of penetration of certain things in the US, it is stronger. The ecosystem's different. So I would look at it and say, look, if you are in the US and you want to go pursue a grant here in the UK, we'd be happy to be your partner and pursue a grant with you. And let's make something happen, because there are those types of programs. And there are those that are encouraging UK companies to expand into the US, whether you're in the EU, wherever. I think there's always a way of trying to help somebody. We actually had a conversation with somebody in Australia the other week.
I love it. I love it. You guys are just helping everyone. I mean, and I cannot stress this enough. Pollution doesn't pay attention to borders or country lines or anything. This is a worldwide thing. We need to start thinking of ourselves as a worldwide entity. We're all in this together. Whether or not we breathe is going to depend on all of us.
When we breathe, we want that to be fresh air.
Fresh air, not
gray, not full of plastics. We want fresh air.
Not full of particulate matter, which makes you sick. So let's all do this together, because the only benefit is we're just helping each other. That's it.
Right.
That's what we're doing. That's the whole point of this. So EdieAnn, thank you for your time. I know you guys are very, very busy, so I'm very grateful that you took this carve out of time for your day. And please keep doing what you're doing with Woven. It's a great company.
We shall. And you know what? I'd love to come back anytime. You just talk ecosystem.
Anytime, because as you guys grow and the more you do, and even if you want to start promoting some of the people that you are launching, bring them on out. The more information, the better. This is what this whole show is about, is information. So bring it.
Wendy, thank you for doing this. I mean, look, it also takes people like you doing these shows. So
Yeah.
without it, we wouldn't get there. So thank you. I have my first podcast and I've had fun.
I try to make it fun and entertaining and a little educational. We try to bring it all together at once. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I like it.
I love it. So guys, thank you so much. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom with Environmental Social Justice with EdieAnn. Please check out Woven. You can find it at Woven Startup on LinkedIn.com and hunt down EdieAnn, give her a reach. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.